Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TDWI webinar program. I'm Andrew Miller, and I'll be your moderator. For today's program, we're going to talk about, is your change advisory board preventing incidents or just creating the illusion that it is? And our sponsor today is BigPanda. For our presentations today, we'll hear first from Dion Larson with TDWI. And after Dion speaks, we'll be joined by Tony Bermio and Rachel Pearson with BigPanda for a presentation and a live demo. Before I turn over the time to our speakers, please allow me to go over a few basics. Today's webinar will be about an hour long, and at the end of their presentations, our speakers will host a question and answer period. So if at any time during these presentations you'd like to submit a question, just use the Ask a Question area on your screen to type in your question. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can click on the Technical FAQs area and you'll see technical assistance. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, you can locate the resource window to download the PDF. Lastly, we are recording today's event and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version so you can view the presentation again later if you'd like, or if you'd like, you can share with a colleague. Again, today we're going to be discussing a change advisory board preventing incidents, and our first speaker is Dion Larson. She's a research fellow at TDWI and president of Larson & Associates. Dion is an active data science practitioner and academic. Her research has focused on enterprise data strategy, agile analytics, and data science best practices. She has consulted for several Fortune 500 companies, presented at multiple conferences, including TDWI, and has authored numerous research articles on data science methodology and best practices. With that, please welcome Dion, and I will hand it over to you now.
All right, thank you very much, and good morning. So even in the world of Agile and DevOps, CABs are still widely used because they represent structure, oversight, and control. They show that changes are being reviewed before they reach production, but the real question is not whether CABs are well-intentioned, it's whether they are still effective in the environments we operate today. So today we're going to start with the purpose of a CAB and why it made sense in the environment it was built for. We're then going to look at scale and complexity because modern change volume is very different from the world CABs were designed to support. And then from there, we'll examine the tension between speed and safety, look at what is missing from many traditional CAB processes, and then we'll close where change management is headed next. Then we'll move into the demo and finish with questions. So our key question is if your CAB disappeared tomorrow, would your incident rate go up or would it stay the same? So a lot of IT leaders pause at this question because the data to answer usually doesn't really exist. CABs have been widely adopted, they're deeply embedded into our processes, but they're rarely validated. So if we have to look at what the CABs were designed for, first is the promise of reducing risk, gate dangerous changes, and protect systems from stability issues. And we do this all through human review. The second is our reality. Hours of weekly meetings, unclear return on an effort, and no proof of fewer incidents, and no real feedback loop. The third is our paradox. High effort does not always equal measurable impact, yet the process continues largely unquestioned. So that is really the issue that we're examining today. CABs consume time and credibility, but most organizations still clearly cannot determine whether the process is really improving our outcomes. So let's quickly look at the original purpose of a CAB. CABs were created for good reason. The first point is that CABs are really rooted in ITIL, and ITIL originally was focusing on change management. Today it focuses more on change enablement. But initially, CABs were built from best practices. We wanted controlled, predictable environments where change was infrequent, especially when we had high stakes involved. The other thing they were designed for is the weekly release cycles. In that setting, we convened a board to review changes that was practical and useful. And the third point is risk avoidance through review. Human expertise served as the main filter, and standardized approval created a consistent checkpoint before deployment. So the key point here is not that CABs were a bad idea, it's that they were designed for a very specific operating model. So then, of course, the world changed. There is a contrast between what CABs were built for and really the world that we operate in today. If we look at our older model, cabs were built for weekly or monthly release cycles. We had monolithic and predictable architectures, and we had low change frequency, isolated risk, and a small, stable infrastructure footprint. But when we think about our IT landscape today, we have hundreds of deployments. We have cloud native microservices, continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines, non-linear system dependencies, and we have massive dynamic infrastructure at scale. The key line here is the operating system has fundamentally transformed, but CAB processes have largely remained frozen in the era of the early 2000s, and that's really the source of our tension. So now we want to look at our scale and complexity problems. And there is really a key point. Modern IT organizations don't just have a change problem, they have a change volume problem. And the math of human review doesn't really scale. And when we look at our first issue of volume, there are thousands of changes across applications, infrastructure, APIs, and configurations. No board can review all of that effectively. The second issue is our interconnected systems. A single change can cascade across services and dependencies, so risk is no longer isolated or easy to assess in a meeting. And our third issue is speed versus control. The business wants faster releases, while a CAB introduces delay. In a high velocity environment, that delay has real cost. So it's really not just about more work, it's about the level of scale and complexity that traditional manual review was never designed to handle. So what's our dilemma? Well, we have a trade-off that we have very clearly here. One option is to move faster. That means streamlining the CAB review, delivering at a pace the business demands, accepting that some changes will cause incidences, and prepare to respond quickly. The other option, of course, is to slow down. That simply means enforcing thorough CAB review, protect stability through process, but also accept that you may fall behind faster and lose talent organizations that trust engineers more. The message is clear. CABs are caught between speed and safety, and in many organizations, they are delivering neither especially well. So we all know that we can't manage what we can't measure, but sometimes we are measuring the wrong things. We take a look at how CABs have been measuring value in the past, but what we really find is that CABs are measuring activity, not outcomes. When we look at the different metrics here, like the number of changes, we'll see that we're really focusing on activity. So like the number of changes approved measures volume, but not really whether incidences were prevented. If we look at meeting duration, well, it measures effort, but not really value. And then if we look at the number of incidences overall, that measures noise, but not really where the incidences were change related. Change lead time measures speed, but not the risk of faster delivery. So the most important question is did this CAB decision improve the outcome? And this is really almost never answerable with our current data. That means many organizations are evaluating the process without being able to evaluate its real impact. So what's really missing? Well, we can look at what CABs rely on today, but we often lacked what we really need. We rely on things like institutional memory, gut instinct from senior reviewers, static rules, anecdotal knowledge, and consensus-based decisions. What we really need are things like predictive risk scoring, feedback loops from approvals to outcomes, direct linkage between changes and incidences, and learning systems that improve over time, and evidence-based classification. So really, without a feedback loop, CABs cannot learn. Without learning, they cannot improve. And without improvement, the process becomes ritual rather than risk reduction. That's a pretty strong summary of the gap that we have today. We also have to look at some of the damage that ineffective CABs can introduce. But this helps us understand a little bit more on root cause to consequence. So, one of the things we have to look at is operational deterioration. Change related incidents still occur. This means rework and rollbacks can increase, and teams can lose trust in the process. The process can also become theater. CABs turn into either a rubber stamp or a blocker, and shadow approvals start to appear around it. Then there is the compounding financial cost. We can have delayed releases, incidents response downtime, lost innovation, and engineer frustration. All of this stuff adds up. There's also cultural erosion. Teams stop focusing on reducing risk and start focusing on getting approval. Compliance begins to replace accountability. So the damage here is not just operational, it spreads into cost, behavior, and culture. We also have what we consider to be a false confidence problem. There are three key estimates used here to illustrate the problem, and we've compiled this from multiple references. The first one is 80% of changes are tied to change related incidences, even with the CAB. The second is we spend about 4.5 hours weekly on CAB with no real reduction in incident rate. And the third is about 62%. This is referring to engineers and high velocity teams. They report working around formal change processes at least sometimes. When we look at these figures, what it really suggests for us is that organizations are investing meaningful time in CAB meetings, but we're still seeing a high level of change related disruption and operating environments where many engineers bypass the process anyway. So the real key takeaway is this: it doesn't really reflect a broken organization, but what it does reflect is a broken process, one that never was designed for the for the environment it operates in now. All right, so what are high performing organizations doing differently? Well, the first practice is to be more proactive. We're focusing on shifting left and doing a risk assessment further upstream. Risk is evaluated earlier in the pipeline before a change reaches a review meeting. The second is, and this is probably the most important one, is change intelligence. With everything we're doing today with analytics and AI, why can't we do change analytics? So we are looking at things like historical incident and deployment data to predict likely risk. We're also looking at decisions and making sure that they rely more on evidence versus memory or precedent. The other one that's very important, and we highlighted this a little bit earlier, is continuous feedback loops. Every outcome needs to feedback into the system so the predictive model can improve over time. That's really basic analytics. So that's where the major shift is happening. We're moving from static review to creating learning systems that get smarter with every deployment. So, what does the future look like of change management? Well, it does give us a good idea of what the progression should be. We still have our manual reviews. We have to have opinion based reviews, but unfortunately, they're slow. But we can improve this process, incorporating things like risk scoring, where decisions can become more data driven and assisted. From there, we can advance to more automated policies where rule based automation handles more of the process. And finally, we can think about change intelligence, which is predictive and self learning. So this makes our direction very clear. Organizations need to invest in an automated, decision driven change intelligence system. This system will outperform those that are still relying mainly on weekly approval meetings. So our takeaway message is this: the future of change management is not more meetings, it's better intelligence. Speed and safety are not opposites. When the right data is in the room, we will have better opportunities for better decisions. Okay, I will turn it now back over to Andrew.
Thank you so much, Dion. That was a great presentation there. And now it is time for me to introduce our guest speakers today. First of which is Rachel Pearson with BigPanda. Rachel is the Senior Product Marketing Manager at BigPanda, where she focuses on bringing agentic IT operations to market for enterprise IT teams. Over the past 2 years, she has helped shape how organizations adopt AI ops technologies to automate L1 operations, accelerate incident response, and move toward more proactive and preventative IT operations. Based in Portland, Oregon, she works closely with product engineering and go-to-market teams to translate complex AI capabilities, including AI assistance and prevention for incidents, into clear value for customers operating modern, large-scale IT environments. We're also joined today by Tony Bermio with BigPanda. Tony is a seasoned technology sales professional currently serving as principal sales engineer at BigPanda, where he leverages deep technical expertise to help enterprise customers optimize their IT operations through the BigPanda AI-powered platform. With a career spanning multiple roles in sales engineering and related technical fields, he has built a strong track record of partnering with large organizations to solve complex observability, AI ops, and incident management challenges. Based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Tony brings a blend of hands-on technical acumen and customer-focused strategic thinking, honed through experiences at BigPanda and prior companies. Welcome to both of our guest speakers today, and Rachel, I'll pass it over to you now for your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. Okay, and I also want to say thank you to Dion. That was such a great tee-up to really highlight the problem and the challenges that are facing enterprises today. It's so difficult to know, with the vast amount of information, what is going to cause an incident or an outage. And this is a topic that BigPanda has been passionate about for solving for our customers. You know, we want to drive innovation, and our customers often have to make that hard decision, the dilemma that Dion highlighted there of, do we go for innovation or do we pull back and pick the higher risk? And then knowing what is actually going to be the outcome of that. Is that decision working or not? And so today, I'm going to talk quickly about who BigPanda is and what our approach is to solving this dilemma and how that's working. Tony is going to give us a really wonderful product demo so you can see it working live, and we have some really exciting customer success stories as well. To take a quick high-level step back and introducing BigPanda. BigPanda is bringing agentic automation to the IT ops industry in a meaningful way. It is an agentic IT operations platform that helps large enterprises detect, respond to, and prevent incidents across very complex hybrid environments. We do this with 3 core products, starting with AI Incident Prevention, which is designed to predict and prevent incidents before they occur. From there, AI Detection and Response is designed to automate L1 operations, reduce that noise of routine incidents. For any incidents that do get escalated up to higher level teams, our third product is AI Incident Assistant, which is designed to supercharge those major incident management teams so that they can have a proper response. And then any learns or anything learned from those major incidents feeds back into incident prevention so that we know in advance, okay, this has caused a major at our organization before. Now, all of this is built on the IT knowledge graph. To enable the reality of agentic IT ops, it requires context, data, and a really comprehensive understanding of your environment. And the magic behind BigPanda is this IT knowledge graph, which ingests, indexes, graphs all of the data from your services so that you get the full picture of your IT ecosystem. That relationship mapping and full context is what AI needs to deliver accurate, context-rich results. AI built on top of siloed data is only going to generate incomplete or inaccurate results. And so our approach here is why we are so successful. I also want to be really clear in that we're not just ingesting really structured, perfectly clean data, which is what has been the foundation of IT ops and ITSM for the last 20 years. Obviously, of course, you need that information, the structured machine data from observability and CMDB, but to really derive the nuances and the context, you need the organizational knowledge. How did we resolve this in the past? Was it documented? Where was it documented? It's that human layer of context and expertise that does not fit into a square alert. So bringing this to change management now, it's impossible to think a human or a cab can know all of this context to make really fast informed decisions and not prohibit or limit the innovation scale. So building our change management solution on top of the IT knowledge graph really enables the AI to be informed of the relationships across the CIs, across your services, and not just what's siloed in the ITSM tool. It's able to pull on organizational context, like which services are more critical for you, which teams are more trustworthy, what's caused an incident before from that historical context. And it's pulling all of that vast information and at the same time has situational awareness. Is there an incident that's currently happening right now on that CI that you want to propose a change for? All of this is really relevant and important information for a cab to make a fast decision. So that is why we've built it and why we've seen so much success with our IT knowledge graph. Not to take away from Tony's demo that's about to happen, I just want to tee up what you will see with our change risk management tool. Change managers and engineers, they can submit their changes to be analyzed by the AI-powered risk rating system. From there, it delivers a really clear and comprehensive summary of why a change is risky or not, based on all of that contextual information that we just talked about. And if there is a high risk, it then says, okay, here is why. That context from all of your services is really important, and it can inform the engineer on, all right, this is how you can go about lowering your risk. That empowers teams to be proactive with their changes. It fuels innovation, and it keeps a cab focused on only the most relevant changes. In addition to the change risk management solution, we have a really robust change analytics dashboard that Tony is going to show to measure the overall performance of your change program. And so those insights within the dashboard, they can help a cab understand if they are measurably lowering the risk for their business. And also, these are stats that you can really present to board. This is a board level stat of knowing, okay, how are we measuring the risk overall to the business? How has that been impacted? How are we lowering it? It's extremely actionable and informative. So with that, we have been live over a year with some of our customers now with incident prevention and our change risk management solution. And they've seen some really exciting results. They have not only, by trusting in the data and trusting in the AI solution, they've not only transformed their change programs and how they approach change management, but they've also seen a greater impact across their organization. Large reductions in incidents caused by change overall, and then if any of those do occur, they were reduced in length. Being able to measure that cab effectiveness and knowing, okay, how can I improve my program overall? We've seen some really exciting results there for our customers and what it can do for their businesses. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tony, and he's going to show us the demo.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. I'm going to share my screen here. Just make sure that thing shows up okay. Okay. My screen visible here? Okay, I think it looks good.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you. So just by way of introduction one more time, my name is Tony Bermio. I'm going to walk through our demonstration of the incident prevention product today. As Rachel mentioned, we're going to talk about a variety of key areas. I want to start with one of the areas that she mentioned right at the end there called change risk analytics. So we're collecting all of your changes, we're risk rating them, and we're using all of the information that's valuable to you that you're using during CAB, like Dion mentioned, right? To understand how risky and what the postures of those changes. One of the things we're able to do is roll up a very valuable risk analytics view that gives you everything from risk posture over a period to how you're improving, top performing teams. You can see here we have riskiest categories. We have total changes, average scores, and so on. As we sort of scroll down here, there are a variety of other areas we start to tap into, like team change health, risky CI categories sort of broken down for us. We also have riskiest times to deploy. We have risk scores and average weights and so on. We also can deliver things like riskiest times and so on as well. So a lot of really valuable information. Additional areas that we could start to look at would be like in the flow analysis. We can start to dig into how these areas actually deliver end-to-end via Sankey as well. And then we can look at things like causality and prediction quality as well, which will look at incidents caused by changes, what the prediction accuracy looks like, our incident rate, and any false positives or false negatives. So what's driving a lot of this information? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's our ability to risk rate changes themselves. So I just clicked on change risk here, and this is going to load up for us. I'm going to filter this out so we can look at some of the riskier changes we have going on right now. And this is going to look at all of the changes over a period of time, in this case, the current month. And it's going to deliver us some information around the changes we have coming up. We have one here. Looks like AI has delivered us a summary here telling us that we're doing an upgrade to our enterprise integration layer. And we can see that BigPanda's incident prevention has risk rated this in 84%. That's pretty high, and we're calling it a critical. And if we drill into this, we can start to understand more about why this change is risky and understand more details around why we're risk rating it the way that we are. So let's look at the anatomy of this change risk assessment in a little bit more detail. We understand here the start, the end. We also have assignment groups. We have the priority. Down here, we can see a change requiring immediate attention. It's telling us why, and it's giving us some details here. We also have an AI change summary that's bubbled up. And we can also see down here some more information around the planning and preparation. This all gets incorporated into the change risk assessment. Now, the really interesting thing to call out is we can see that through perhaps the CAB or other ways of delivering this information, this has been declared a high risk. Now, this is risk declared within ITSM itself. Now, you'll notice that there's a discrepancy here. So incident prevention is able to sort of draw some parallels there to how often there's discrepancy between the declared risk and the actual AI risk assessment that we're doing. Traditionally, when we talk about risk, the risk scoring, and we're going to talk about it in more detail, we're taking a lot more information into consideration in real time using AI as a support system to really drill into, hey, has this incident, has a similar change caused an incident in the past? What does that mean for this one that we're working on right now? And let's start sort of thinking about what are some of the steps we can do to bring down the risk before we deploy. Some other things to call out here, we're going to also talk about the impact analysis, namely the affected services, affected CIs, are there any related change tasks? And then we can jump into some of the other areas as well around why we're rating it the way that we are. So I just clicked on, view the change risk assessment here. Some really critical pieces to the puzzle start to be surfaced here. The first one is the risk prediction score. So we analyze all changes across 5 different vectors. We're going to go through these. One is implementation risk. It's going to evaluate the complexity and the challenges around implementing this particular change, right? Higher scores, of course, are going to perhaps require some specialized skills, coordination, and so on. We have topological risk. This is going to measure the scope, the infrastructure components that are going to be affected and what that means to this change in practice. Team and individual risk. Hey, how reliable is the team that's going to be pushing this change out? Historical incident risk. This is going to look at, historically, changes of a similar caliber, a similar sort of setup have caused incidents in the past, and what does that mean? And then organizational specific risk. What does this mean specifically to your organization? The time of day that this is being deployed. Is it during a, are you a streaming service and you're rolling this out during an important sporting event, things of that nature? That'll all get taken into consideration to make sure that we're risk rating this as accurately as possible. Now, as a follow-up to this risk rating, right, we deliver actionable steps. They come in the form of a risk reasoning and a set of suggested mitigation steps. So what does risk reasoning mean? Well, it's a set of bullets that tell you precisely why we're risk rating this the way that we are. So we're going to say things like, in the past, similar changes have caused issues. Here are some things that here are some steps that were taken to mitigate this. Database schema adjustments have caused partial deployment failures in the past, right? These are all because we have all this data in the IT knowledge graph. We can tap into it to really deliver robust results that are actionable. And then when we talk about like legitimate action, we have the suggested mitigation steps. Take these steps to bring down the risk score. So these will be delivered based specifically on the change we're evaluating. These are sort of custom designed, if you will, every single time based on historical evidence. And users can take this information and go and take tangible action to bring down the risk score. Now let's talk about how that looks in practice from a risk score perspective. So we have a risk history here, and this is going to track how often this change has been sort of re-risk rated, if you will. So there's a couple different ways to interact with this. You can click force re-rate. After some updates were made, perhaps you want to force risk rate this. You can go ahead and click this, and it'll queue it up to be re-risk rated. Additionally, down here, if a user inside of, let's say, ServiceNow makes some updates inside of the change record, and we're going to take a look at that in a moment, and it warrants a re-risk rating, incident prevention will do so. But not every single time does the risk score come down, and we will tell you that. If the rating held, meaning a change was made or a mitigation step was taken, but it didn't bring the score down, we will mark it as rating held. If it actually does risk rate it and it changes the score, we're going to show you that as well, and then we'll give you a layout of what that looks like over a period of time with and have the current risk assessment laid out at the bottom here. So this sort of begs the question, well, these are all really important areas, but some mean more than others, and we agree. On the configuration side of the house, you have the ability to govern over how valuable or how critical these areas are to the risk rating itself. So these have to equal 100%, but you have the ability to jump in here and actually toggle these up or down based on how valuable they are to the risk rating. So in this particular setup, right, the organizational specific risk we're saying is not important at all. But if implementation has historically been a challenge, you can sort of drive this up and you can sort of bring down some of these other ones to make it a little bit more consistent with your business. So very customizable, very open box. And the goal is to meet you where you are and help you evaluate changes and other key areas the way that you do it today as closely as possible using AI as the backbone. If we come down here, we have a few other things that I want to call out. Let's come down a little bit further. You have the ability to write these back to ITSM, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. So you can send this over to the notes section and within a change record for teams to action right in the system. We're going to look at that live. You also have the ability to field sync, and that is to perhaps kick off some automation or other things that happen within your key tools there. For example, ServiceNow, when certain data is bubbled up within incident prevention. You can also set some notifications. If a certain change is evaluated and the score exceeds a threshold, let's say 75%, I want to notify certain teams. I want to notify certain individuals to get ahead of these risky changes before they become a problem. And then you can get even granular still. You can look at it through the lens of specific scoring categories. Hey, if it might be a 70% threshold, and maybe it's risk rated 60%, but you know what? The implementation score was very high, and that's a little bit worrisome for us. So we still want to notify if that's the case. So we let you get super granular with these results. Now let's look at this inside of the source tool here. I'm going to jump back one. And we have this risk score. As I mentioned earlier, we have our risk reasoning and suggested mitigation steps. Those are super actionable for us. And if I click on that link there, it actually jumps us directly into ServiceNow. And we'll notice that if we scroll down, those results, the assessment, the risk assessment score, our summary, the prediction, the reasoning, and the mitigation steps are all meeting those users exactly where they work. No need to swivel chair, move into different tools in order to understand or make meaningful steps with the data. We're going to put it right where you work. And the last thing I'll talk about here is more on the sensing and knowledge side of the house. And this is to sort of bring it full circle from a data perspective. We talked about the knowledge graph, and we talked about the data that we're consuming. From an incident prevention standpoint, there's a lot of information that we're going to be able to consume. We have on the left-hand side all of the data coming in from our sort of awareness layer around our core tools, like Rachel mentioned, where we have AI detection and response sort of feeding in. We have all the chat information that's being leveraged. We have data coming in via our unified data connector that's going to pull in from sources like Jira, ServiceNow, Confluence, other resources that are valuable for you. And then we're going to build a very rich context layer via our IT knowledge graph that everything we just discussed and walked through will tap into in order to pull that rich context to risk rate the most effective way possible. And then we have our access layer where we can take those actionable findings and put them in the hands of the tools and the teams where they work. Awesome. So thank you very much. From a presentation perspective, that's what I had for you today. If there are any questions or follow-ups, I'm happy to answer them. Andrew, I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. That was so great. Coming back just to finish up with how customers and some real world examples that we have. One of our customers that's been using incident prevention or change risk management for over a year now, it's a global hospitality corporation. They have about 28,000 annual changes, really large, complex, lots of movement. And so with that, they have seen, I want to first focus on that risk distribution. Hopefully you can see those numbers there. But what it's saying is that it's a little over 80% of their changes are now rated as low or very low risk. The automation capabilities of that, of just being able to make sure that your cab is focused on the really high priorities, the high risk, that's only at 1%. So the time that's been freed up there is really incredible. From knowing all of the context of what is really risky and what isn't. From there, they've seen a reduction in their change-caused incidents by 28% over the past year. What they've also done, they also use our AI Incident Assistant and run automated post-validation checks. So when a change does go through, our AI Incident Assistant will go in, validate, is anything happening? Is there anything weird? And if it is causing an incident, the right people are notified immediately. So that has resulted in a 36% reduction in MTTR. Really exciting real world results for this large corporation. And my last slide that I have here, we're putting questions into the Q&A, is we have another really large health enterprise that's also been using this for a year now, and they've had some exciting results. I remember when we were first working with them, they were manually downloading from ServiceNow and then their cab was using an Excel doc to try to analyze everything. And obviously you don't have all the information at hand when you're using a really complex Excel doc. And so by using change risk management, they were finding that a lot of their low risk changes were still causing incidents. And so we were able to flag those and mark, no, what you thought was low risk actually is high. From that, they've seen a 40% reduction in their change related outages. Another really cool stat is that they now have automated over 90% of their changes. They're auto-assessed by the AI-powered change risk management, and it says, okay, these are low risk, go ahead, go push these through. Do not need to hit the cab. They have a cab avoidance rate, essentially, of 90%, really ensuring that the cab is spending their time on the right places. From reducing their overall incidents and outages, they've been able to track that they've reduced risk exposure to the business by 500 million. This is a stat that the VP brought to the board. These are true board level stats, and really exciting to see that impact from using AI, trusting it, and the end results are really exciting and impactful across the organization. Okay, that's everything we have. Andrew, if you want to kick off the Q&A, anything that Tony and I can help answer?
Terrific. Yeah, absolutely. We have several questions from the audience here, and thank you both for that great presentation. We'll start off with this first question here. I'll leave it open to either of you to answer this one, whoever would like to answer first. This person says, our team lives in ServiceNow and Jira. Does BigPanda plug into those tools, or is it another dashboard people have to remember to check?
You want me to chime in on? Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
Sure. I was going to say, Tony did walk through showing like ServiceNow, how it lives within there. It does plug right in there because I know a lot of folks do live there. And so you can see the work notes, you can see the changes. You can also totally execute everything you need to do within ServiceNow if that is your preferred way to analyze changes.
All right, terrific. We'll move on to the next one here. This person says their risk scoring is right now is basically manual. So how quickly can BigPanda's AI start giving them something more reliable to work with?
Yeah, I can chime in on that one, Rachel. So from a data perspective, as soon as we start collecting data via the unified data connector, that gets indexed immediately. And the risk assessment, the change risk assessment would be able to happen also immediately once we start ingesting those changes. So extremely quick. I would say the piece to the puzzle we would have to iron out is really just getting the data in from those tools and what's valuable, what's useful. We would look to understand what you're using today, how you're using it, what's valuable and what is not. We ingest that, it gets indexed, and then we would leverage incident prevention to tap into those tools to do so.
Yeah, the time to value is really fast.
All right, building on that, this question comes in as, what data is required to get the AI analysis?
So from a data requirement perspective, we don't necessarily have a specific minimum requirement. It would be, I would say the absolute minimum would be your ServiceNow, like the records, problem records, things of that nature that we can use for analysis. But of course, the more data we have, the better. I'll kind of go back to what I mentioned before. We will do sort of a discovery with you to understand what you're using today, what is useful, what is valuable. And then we can, sort of identify some of the low-hanging fruit to bring in to get some analysis started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the more you deliver, the more you can really pull in and get more insights.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, terrific. We'll move on to the next one here. This question is, can BigPanda's CAB replace entirely the current CAB that they have, or is the goal to make it smarter and more data-driven?
I mean, I would really say it's to make it more efficient, as you see from our different customer examples. It was really about making sure that we are using the right time effectively. So, I mean, we've seen cabs where there's 80 plus people on them and they meet twice a day. And we've seen stats from our customers of how often this cab is meeting, and just the time and the money to support crazy cab schedules like that. Our goal here is really to let's lower that. Let's make it more efficient by having more information at our hands.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add to that as well, having worked with several prospects and some of our customers now as well on use cases and what they care about, the efficiency of the cab and the cab improvement efficiencies overall introduces a question along the way, which is, we do this 5 days a week, we do this 3 days a week. Do we still have to do that? And I think that gets to the core of, well, is this going to replace it? I think at the end of the day, if you put the process in place around it and, you have the communication mechanisms that notify the right teams or groups when something is truly high risk and they take action to drive down that risk, I think there is, definitely a conversation to be had about using the cab in a more ad hoc fashion as opposed to a scheduled fashion like it is today. I have a couple of individuals that I've worked with where their cab meetings, exceeded 40 minutes per day, 5 days a week. And the goal was to bring that down to a number that's very manageable, maybe 1 day a week. And we looked at it through the lens of incident prevention to do that.
All right, fantastic. I think we'll have time for one final question here, unless other questions are asked by the audience. This last one is, do we need to organize or clean our data before getting started?
No, there's no requirement on organizing or cleaning the data. Actually, our unified data connector will bring in whichever data source you have. We index it on our side, right? So it all gets sort of brought in and leveraged sort of as is. It doesn't need to be structured. Actually, the IT knowledge graph consists of both structured and unstructured resources. And then when we do the searching, right, we look through both of those sets of data in order to deliver results. So the answer is no there.
All right, fantastic. Well, we've gone through all the audience questions, and I really appreciate everyone's time here. So please allow me to thank our speakers. We did hear from Dion Larson with TDWI and Tony Bermio and Rachel Pearson with BigPanda. We'd also like to thank BigPanda once again for sponsoring today's webinar. And please remember, we did record today's webinar. We'll be emailing you a link to an archived version of the presentation. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, you can locate the resource window to download the PDF. And finally, not only does TDWI offer leading-edge team training to advance team skills in BI, AI, data governance, strategy, and more, but TDWI now offers team enablement to build in-house capability across your full digital journey. More details will follow in your post-webinar communications. And from all of us here, let me say thank you so much for attending. This does conclude today's event.